The echoes of the empty room. Michael never considered himself superstitious. He was a man of logic, a creature of habit. When his neighbor, Mr. Peterson, announced he was moving away, Michael thought little of it. The old man had lived in the apartment next door for over a decade, but they were never particularly close. They exchanged the occasional greeting, nothing more. The day Mr. Peterson left, the apartment stood empty. Michael saw the landlord lock the door, making a mental note that he now had one less neighbor to worry about. The building was already quiet, but with that apartment vacant, it should have been completely silent. It wasn't. The first time Michael heard the footsteps, he dismissed them as sounds from another apartment. Old buildings had strange acoustics. He was used to the occasional creaks, the hum of distant pipes, but these were distinct, deliberate, heavy steps pacing slowly from one end of the apartment to the other. Michael frowned. It was nearly midnight. No one should be in there. He hesitated for a moment before pressing his ear to the wall. The footsteps continued, a slow, rhythmic stride. Back and forth, back and forth. Goosebumps crawled up his arms. He considered calling the landlord, but decided against it. Maybe someone was checking the apartment. A maintenance worker? A realtor? The footsteps stopped. A breath he hadn't realized he was holding escaped him. Just his imagination, he told himself, until the next night. Again, the steps started around midnight. Again, the slow, heavy pacing. It lasted for hours. When Michael woke up, his body felt drained, as if he hadn't truly rested. By the third night, he'd had enough. This time, he wasn't just going to listen, he was going to check. Grabbing his phone, he stepped into the hallway and approached the door to Mr. Peterson's old apartment. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. The footsteps inside stopped abruptly. Michael's breath hitched. Someone had been in there, but the landlord had locked the place. Who could it be? Summoning courage, he gripped the doorknob. Locked. He knocked one last time, waited, then turned away. As he reached his door, a sound made him stop. A soft creak. Turning his head slowly, he saw the doorknob on the vacant apartment twist, but the door remained shut. He bolted inside his own apartment and locked the door behind him. He told himself he was being ridiculous, that it was a trick of the light, a draft. But when he lay in bed that night, the footsteps returned, louder than before. Days passed. The pattern remained the same. Every night, the pacing began at midnight and lasted for hours. The anxiety gnawed at him. He stopped sleeping. He barely ate. He even asked the landlord about it, but the old man waved him off. No one's been in that apartment, he said. It hasn't even been listed yet. Michael didn't argue, but deep down, he knew something was wrong. He decided to investigate himself. That night, armed with a flashlight and his phone, he waited for the footsteps to start. When they did, he stepped outside. His heart pounded as he approached the door. Taking a deep breath, he knelt and peered through the keyhole. At first, he saw nothing. The apartment was dark, but then movement. A shape passed in front of the keyhole, blocking the dim glow from the streetlight outside. Michael jerked back, stumbling onto the floor. He scrambled to his feet and ran inside, slamming the door behind him. The footsteps continued until dawn. By now, Michael was desperate. He started researching the building, the apartment, Mr. Peterson, anything that could explain what was happening. He found nothing unusual. No reports of deaths, no tragedies, just an ordinary apartment in an ordinary building. But he couldn't ignore the feeling that something was watching him. One night, as the footsteps started again, he decided to record them. Setting his phone against the wall, he hit record and left it there. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, heart racing with every step that echoed through the walls. The next morning, he hesitated before playing the recording. The footsteps were clear, louder than he expected. But then he heard something else. A whisper. He replayed the clip, adjusting the volume. The voice was faint, but distinct. One word. Leave. A chill ran through him. His hands shook as he turned off the recording. That was it. He had to go. He packed his bags that day. He didn't care about breaking the lease, didn't care about the money. He just wanted out. That night, he stayed at a hotel, and for the first time in weeks, he slept soundly. The next morning, curiosity got the better of him. He checked the recording again. The footsteps were there. The whisper was there. But this time, at the very end of the clip, there was something new. A soft knock on his own door. Michael never returned to that apartment.